Yo, hey yo, welcome to the Off Base Podcast. Oh, a yawn to start it. The podcast that is carefully crafted to remind you to suck on a fat one if you think that you're the only one, because you're not. I'm your host. I'm the Rocky Mountain no-name Jackass. It's 53 degrees in the city of Aurora at 7:43 in the a.m. on December 2nd, 2021. And it's time for the chaw. Chaw it up. Woo woo. There we go. It's in. Got a little stem. And of course, the customary spit or two. Ew, that's so disgusting. Let's get it rolling. See if I can help out anybody out there who just needs some jackass to listen to on their morning commute. I have to be honest. I am quite amazed at the current weather situation here in Colorado. Probably because I have been uninformed about the weather situation in Colorado. I'm finding out from people the more I talk to that we could have the Rockies covered in a blanket, and yet where we live, it might be 70 degrees outside. It's very odd. It might have to be with how weather systems move across the mountains. Maybe, being on the directly on the other side of the Rockies, we don't get hit as much as if you were on, the western side of the Rockies. I don't know for sure. Maybe there's a lot of ignorance in that. But I would have thought, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that here in December, we would have had some snow already in Denver/Aurora. And we don't. It's weird. I've been bracing myself for snow because luckily, I have been without snow for the last 8 years. I grew up on Lake Erie, and if anyone is familiar with that particular region of the United States of America, you're going to know that you get used to, in the wintertime, probably around Thanksgiving, busting out your shovel and shoveling 6 to 8 inches 2 times a week in order to get to school. 6 to 8 inches of snow, man. Sometimes over a foot. It was a regular occurrence when I was growing up. Regular occurrence. And it sucked. So we are no strangers to snow in Erie, Pennsylvania. And the thing that always cracked me up when I went to graduate school in Virginia was there couldn't even be a flake of snow on the ground. Not even a flake. They would simply have the threat of snow. And the grocery aisles for bread, milk, and eggs would be bare, as if a pandemic was coming. And then, the day would pass, we'd get no snow at all. And everybody was like, oh, phew, we dodged a bullet there. It's like, it's just snow, fuckers. I was dealing with it all my life. We never had a snow day. Well, we had snow days if maybe, we got 14, 16 inches and you couldn't get the plows out there early enough, or the snow would be coming down so hard that the plows would plow once and even, another 6 inches would drop. That's like the only time that we had snow days when I was growing up. Back on the Mistake on the Lake, or is that Cleveland? I can't remember if Cleveland's the Mistake on the Lake or if Erie is. Erie was just Erie. But I will say this, we had a great time growing up there. Places like that in the mid-Atlantic region are well known for having a bar on every other street corner. That always cracked me up. My parents still live there, and we've talked to them over the years, but, would you ever consider moving out of here? Because it's so fucking cold and snowy in the winter. Why would you want to stay here? And both of them had said, well, all our friends are here. We've spent all our lives here. And I have 2 older brothers and an older sister, and we've all moved around the country. Not my oldest brother. He was in North Carolina for a while now. He's in Cleveland. So he hasn't moved as much as my sister and my other brother and myself. But we've been around the country to different places, lived in different places. And there's something to be said about your happiness versus where you live. But when you grew up in the era that my parents did, and which is, they were both born in 1941. So they came of age, early 50s. When did they get married? They got married in 63, I think it was. And have been together ever since. So they're going on, pardon me my math on this one, I think they're going on their 58th wedding anniversary next year. It's pretty fucking awesome. I hope they make it to 60. They're both, my mother's in really nice health right now. My dad could stand to lose a couple pounds. But in their era, it was funny because my son, my 8-year-old, he's doing a project for school, a cultural heritage project, where he's finding out about, where he came from, what customs we passed down over the years. It's a nice little project. For him, it's cool. For me, it's cool to find out information. But I mean, ultimately, you guys know this out there. If you've had children pass through the elementary schools, those days when they have projects, quote unquote, it's just a matter of us doing 3rd grade homework or us doing 2nd grade homework. It's like it's an assignment for the parents. And this one I don't mind. I really don't, because I get to involve my parents in it. My son, we FaceTimed my parents last night, and my son went through the questionnaire, and I got to find out even more about how my parents grew up. But I swear to God, man, if he gets one of these projects like we've gotten in the past, where it's basically me or my wife doing the homework for him, I'm probably going to write to the teachers. I mean, I understand on one hand, the involvement that a child's education is more enhanced by parental involvement in it. But times are different. You got 2 parents working, When we come home, we don't want to do homework. We've already been working 10 hours. And my wife sometimes more. It's fucking nuts. So teachers, elementary school teachers, I get it. I understand the value on the child's education when the parents are involved. But come on, man. Quit fucking doing that to us. I got to take an hour in the morning and then an hour in the afternoon to go pick the kids up, bring them home. So that's 2 hours out of my day lost right there. And then when I get home, my wife's still working, so I'm making dinner. And then I got to do homework. What the fuck? Making me do homework. God damn it. Anyway, to go back to my parents, the life that they had lived growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania, with all that snow, you get hardened. There's a resolve to your character that, hey, if I can get through this winter, I can get through anything. Maybe not anything, but I think you guys understand where I'm going with that. They're hard people. Like, Chicagoans are kind of the same way. So they don't want to move. Now, me, my wife, who grew up in Chicago, and me growing up in Lake Erie, we can't get back to warm weather fast enough. Whether it's Texas, we had a great time in Texas, or back down to Florida, the Florida Panhandle. We loved it down there. Before we lived in Florida and before we lived in Texas, here we go, I'm getting off the highway, so still talking about the weather, but switching gears a little bit. We spent 3 years in Alaska, and if there's anybody out there that hasn't been in Alaska, dude, I highly recommend it. And if I had to make a choice to when to go back to Alaska, I don't think I would go in the summertime. I would go in the wintertime. Speaking of snow, because in the wintertime, granted the glaciers are still there in the summertime, but in the wintertime, if you can go on a glacier tour, man, that was one of the most spectacular natural wonders that I had ever seen. I'll tell you this story, funny story. We had just moved to Alaska in September of 2010. And my wife came down, I think it was either late October or early November morning. We had just gotten like our first snow. And she said to me, this was like a Saturday morning, she said to me, hey, you want to go on a glacier tour? And I said to her, you want me to go look at ice? Incredulously. And she said, yeah. I said, how long is the tour? She said, 3 hours. I said, you want me to look at ice for 3 hours? She said, yeah, come on, it'll be fun. And we went back and forth, and I was quite reluctant. I was like, that's going to be fucking boring. Going out and looking at ice? What the fuck, man? I know what ice looks like. We used to have 4-foot icicles coming off our garage. Wait for them to fall off and then lick them like popsicles. I know about ice. It's too cold. I'm an old man now. I'm not a young man. I can't go out there and have fun with ice, like make swords out of them or knives or something like that. But after a couple minutes of going back and forth, laughing, she convinced me. And we made our trip. Where was it? It was a town, began with a W. Was it Whiting? Wheeling? No, Wheeling is West Virginia. It's Whittier, Alaska. It's right outside of Anchorage. And we hopped on the tour boat, and I was still reluctant. And then all of a sudden, we started to approach one of the glaciers that we were going to go see. And I could see in the distance a piece starting to crack off the glacier. It's called calving, if you've never heard of it before. When a glacier calves, it's when big pieces of the ice break off of it. And I'm looking off in the distance, and I'm seeing this piece start to slide down. And then it hits the water. And of course, because sound travels slower than light does, after about 5-10 seconds, all of a sudden you hear this big cannon, boom, from the ice hitting the water. It was fucking spectacular. And then my reluctance for going out and looking at ice turned into complete awe. Holy shit. And then you get closer to these things. And of course, there's a bunch of pieces of the glacier sitting in the water as you get closer to the actual glacier itself. You get closer to them, and now you start to appreciate what light has to offer. From a distance, you can, without a doubt, appreciate what sound has to offer. But then you get closer to it, and it's like, good God damn, you have never seen a color blue in your life, live, like you will see when you were up close and personal with a glacier. That color took my breath away. Beautiful, beautiful blue that you can't recreate. You really can't. You got to see it live. You got to see it live. So the other fun part also, of course, when you get that close, now a piece calves off and you get to see nature in action. I mean, these pieces are huge. Some of them are, as big as like a half a house or a garage. Just absolutely enormous, probably even bigger than that. But then when you're that close and you see the blueness of the ice and you get that cannon boom when it hits the water, oh man, better than a fireworks show. Way better than a fireworks show. So if I were to ever go back to Alaska, that's the first thing I want to do, is go on a glacier tour. The other fun thing, of course, that we did in the wintertime was go skiing. That's where our kids first learned how to ski. They were 5 and 3 at the time. It was fucking great. And there was a ski resort right outside of Anchorage called Alyeska. The Alyeska Ski Resort. I'll never forget that drive going from Anchorage to Alyeska. And it was only about a 45 minute drive, which made it fucking fantastic. It's like us going to the Rockies. We went to Vail. Vail was only 2 hours, but there's other ski resorts that are maybe an hour 15 minutes right outside of our house in Aurora. So Alyeska, when you're going out there, all of a sudden the road starts to narrow. I should say the landscape starts to narrow as the mountains start to steepen along the road. And you're driving along an inlet from the Pacific Ocean. So the inlet's here and the road is right to the left of it. And you're driving along and then all of a sudden you look left and the mountains just go boom. And you look to the right on the other side of the inlet and the mountains just go boom. And I'm telling you, man, that is also, I hate to reuse the same word again, but that's a spectacular drive. Just the views and getting there. So you've got the mountains just like walls, straight up on either side of you. And then when you get to the ski resort and you go up to the very top of the mountain, it was only like maybe 5,000 feet up off the ground, I think. I hope that's right. But you get to the top and you get off the lift and it's like you're standing in an enormous teacup, the way in which the mountain was carved out. And then you get to the place where you ski down and you're overlooking those walls that you just drove through. And man, I'll tell you, Alaska has a very special place in my heart. As much as my wife and I cannot stand snow and cold, we made the most of our time in Alaska. Speaking of which, Alaska did fucking throw us every horrible piece of weather it could throw at us. We were there 3 years. 1 year that we were there, Anchorage had recorded the largest snowfall in its history. And then the second year that we were there, not the second, but one of the other years that we were there, Anchorage had recorded its lowest average temperature. So Anchorage was fucking throwing jabs, throwing hooks, throwing uppercuts right at us. And we were like, fuck you, Anchorage. We got more glaciers to see. We got more skiing to do. So go ahead and stick that weather straight up your ass. And I didn't even start talking about the fishing up there, which was fucking fantastic. First time I took my stepson, he was 5. Oh man, did he have a great time. Because we had a really nice tour guide who took us out. He had the fish finder, and it was almost like as soon as you stick your pole in the water, you're pulling up ocean bass. We never got any salmon. One of our friends up there, though, got a halibut. And I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who have tasted halibut before. It's probably my favorite fish. There was a restaurant that we would go to up there called Simon and Seifert's. And they would make Parmesan-crusted halibut cheeks. Holy fuck. I mean, halibut in and of itself, the fillets, they got a nice flakiness to them and fantastic flavor. But the cheeks, oh man, so soft. It was like butter. So one of our friends caught a halibut, and if you've never seen a halibut, they're not like, tuna are the some of the biggest eaten fish that we catch as humans. But halibut and tuna, tuna can get anywhere between, like 250 up to 800 pounds. I used to love watching Wicked Tuna. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show on Nat Geo. My son and I started catching up on it a couple months ago. I think it was on HBO Max. But halibuts are also pretty big. Like, they'll range anywhere between, 100 and 300 pounds as well. And my buddy caught one up there, and they had fish tacos for like 6 months with the amount of halibut they had. The first time we went over there, we had fish tacos with him. He was like, "Hey, you want to take some of this home?" I'm like, "Yes," because halibut's expensive, But that was some good shit, fishing up in Alaska. And of course, growing up on Lake Erie, that's where I learned how to fish. My father used to take us there. My father and his father would take us down all the time. And my grandfather, he had a funny saying whenever, like, we'd see people when we were going out fishing in the morning. He'd be like, hey, Tommy, you gonna go buy some bait? He was like, bait? I don't need to buy bait. I got a shovel. And if you don't know what that means, what we would do before we would actually go out on the pier and fish, my grandfather and my brothers and my father and I, we'd go to some, just some little walkway, not non-paved, by the way, just like some tree area, and just stick the shovel in the ground and turn the dirt over and pick out the worms. That's where our bait came from. We didn't buy no bait. My grandfather was so funny about that. I'm not buying bait. I got a shovel. So yeah, you just dig up your worms, get a whole big can. We end up with like 100 worms. And the fish to catch off Lake Erie, if you've never been fishing there before, is walleye or Lake Erie perch. Very, very delicious flaky fish. Every Christmas Eve, here we go, bringing it back to the holiday season. The holiday season, doobie-doobie-doo. Every Christmas Eve, my family does a traditional Polish meal, and I continued the tradition, called the Vigilia, which is basically a meatless meal. It's like the Italians' seven fishes, I think it's called. I can't remember. I think a couple other cultures do a meatless meal on Christmas Eve as well, but the one my father would always do is he'd take Lake Erie perch fillets, put the flour on them, put them in egg, and then the breadcrumbs, and we'd fry that shit up. Morning, bro. Not too shabby at all.
That's good. You're all set, sir. Have a great
Thank you much. So, when it comes to the Vigilia now, I don't have access to Lake Erie perch. Obviously, I could fly it in, but that would be stupid. So what I do is I try to take advantage of any seafood that I can get in the area. Even though we're a landlocked state, we still got some decent seafood. So I'll try to make like a cioppino, which just has a ton of different seafood in it. Find a fish fillet like a snapper or something like that, and then throw in shrimp, mussels, clams, maybe a lobster tail, and some crab. So this will be the last thing that I talk about here, because I'm back on base and I got the mountains in the background with the city of Denver. Where is it? There it is. The skyline of Denver in the foreground. Going back to Alaska real quick. We had Red Lobster when we were growing up, right? First time I was introduced to Red Lobster, I was like, oh, these crab legs, these are the best. Because I'd never had crab legs before. I was like, oh my God, crab's so delicious. Blah, blah, blah. 7 years old, just going nuts over crab. And then my parents were like, holy shit, how much is this bill going to be? But we got to Alaska, and I will tell you this. If you think that you have had delicious crab before, to get Alaskan king crab in Alaska, woo! That is some delicious food. Holy shit. So next time I go to Alaska, first thing, I'm going to see a glacier. I'm going to eat Alaskan snow crab, do some skiing, and then hopefully ship some fish home. That'll do it for the morning, everybody. Hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you this afternoon. I'll smell you then.